Hello, greetings, and welcome everyone to this collaborative effort. I am the Ninjaneer, and we also have.
Hi, my name is Roman Chaar. I'm a med device biotech engineer.
All right. So, what we are. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Aptera enthusiast as well.
Absolutely. So, what we are doing here today is uh, anybody who is currently an Aptera fan is in the knowledge that everything about the company is not completely fleshed out yet. They are a startup. They're getting things ramped up and going. What we did here was, eventually at the outset, good grief, this gentleman here put a very insightful comment on my page, basically pointing out some things that he was concerned about with respect to the company. I basically echoed some of those concerns, and I was like, you know what? Why don't we just go ahead and go ahead and talk about this? Because, well, initially I said, hey, can I make a video about this? And he was like, yeah, why don't we just collaborate? So I'm like, too easy. Here we are. Very intelligent gentleman. He's a very chill guy, very fun to talk to work with. My first collaboration on this channel. What we're going to go ahead and do is kind of talk through the format and get going on what exactly those concerns were and how we both feel about each concern as we go along the line. So let's go ahead and get started here. The first point that was spoken about, basically we have cost. The cost is very close to a Tesla Model 3. So could you kind of break down how your thought process and logic was when you had that concern, when you voiced that concern in your mind, and how you came to that conclusion to have this as a concern?
Yeah, so I currently on the website, if you try to spec out a similar to what the current launch vehicle is, it's gonna, from what the website shows, it's gonna be in the low 30s, maybe 32, I think, for the launch vehicle to have the tri-motor, to have all the solar panels that available for the hatch, the roof, the dashboard, and the hood. Are there any other options on the launch vehicle? Did they, because I know Aptera has an audio package, upgraded audio package. I don't know if that's, I forget off the top of my head if that's mandatory on the vehicle. But
So
regardless, it's just from what the website was showing. I don't know if the website still shows the pricing. It's still in the low 30s, so about 32,000. And of course, that pricing was done, I'm assuming at least a year or two ago. So similar to like how Tesla is doing with the Cybertruck, Elon announced that, oh, we're going to have the cheapest vehicle going to be $40,000. Well, they're not going to launch with the cheapest one. They didn't even expect to have a quad motor at that time. They expected to only do a tri-motor for the performance variant. And I think the price on that was about 100 grand, I think 500-mile range. Anyhow, the point is that, these companies, all the companies, small and big, they make big claims like, oh, we're going to have a crazy low price when it comes out. And lo and behold, that's probably not going to be the case. Like the Cybertruck, from my speculation, is going to be launching at around $89,000. So anyhow, with Aptera, though, with their website, it showed $32,000 about for the launch vehicle, and that was pricing 2 years ago. And so in today's money, in today's market, because even though interest rates are rising, wages are still going up, labor is still much more expensive, parts are still expensive. Nothing has really gone down, especially from my anecdotal personal experience, just shopping around. Nothing has gone down in price. So anyhow, I think the launch vehicle for that Aptera will be around $35,000 minimum, I think. In that case, which is in my perspective a big problem, is that currently the Model 3, right now in May 2023, is $40,000 on their website without federal incentives, which is $3,700, the recent EPA update. It was $7,500. I think the performance variant qualifies because it uses a different battery chemistry. It's not LFP. But the base model, which is the 270-mile one LFP battery, only qualifies for $3,700. And like states, I think New Jersey, Colorado, and California, you get at least another $2,000 in tax incentives. So that brings the cost like well below $5,000 of the purchase value, which then is $35,000. And for me, that's I'm a huge fan, but it just recently I've been, I don't know why, I've been processing it more, and from a price standpoint, it's the same price as what an Aptera would be. Of course, Aptera is more efficient. They're claiming around 100 watt hours per mile compared to the currently Tesla Model 3 with the Aero wheels. It's around 250. But yeah, it's the same price. You have 3 less seats, so it makes it a lot more of a niche vehicle. It's like buying a Miata, not in a way. And I did some calculating. I think in the best case scenario, with the launch Aptera, I think it only would save you at most $1,000 of an electric bill over the Model 3, because the Model 3, it's already very, very efficient. But if you were to drive the Aptera like 20,000 miles a year, which I don't know if all the customers will be doing, maybe, then you at most you would get $1,000 incentive. And of course, that's if you have really good sun exposure. So yeah, what are your thoughts on my concerns?
So that is very interesting in the sense that when I started looking at, especially the launch vehicle, I had that same thought process. Like, wait a minute, what exactly is the draw of an Aptera if it's round about the same price? Because Tesla, part of me, my conspiracy brain, my tinfoil hat was like, maybe they did this because they saw Aptera coming and they wanted to make sure that, I don't know. I have no idea if that's the case. In fact, I don't even think it's the case because, the whole Elon not knowing much about Aptera, like, I don't know if that was the case. I think it was just natural progression. But anyway, that price being so close made me really get into the nitty gritty of why exactly someone, including myself, would want to get an Aptera. And I think that niche falls into a few very particular types of people. Those people that need a secondary commute vehicle, and those people that are very, very young, college, high school, that kind of thing, and want something that is able to take them from A to B as cheap as possible. Because I am in the former category, the Aptera makes sense to me, but it's not going to make sense to everybody. And I think that point, because Chris mentioned it during, well, actually, he's mentioned it for just about every presentation that they've done, that the Aptera is not necessarily for everybody, but for the people that it's for, it is going to be fantastic. And that's where I'm coming from in that headspace. There is a use case that is fairly prominent in the world today that would be great for the Aptera. I was sitting back and trying to figure out who that demographic was initially before I started the thought process to invest. And yeah, that market kind of falls into that category of people who is either very young and does not want to opt for a 4-seater, or someone who is fairly established who has 2 cars and doesn't need 5, 10, 20 seats in all of them, because they have a lot of. Anyway, so the people that don't need that just need a car that gets from A to B, that type of person, Aptera is great for them. In fact, I didn't opt for a Model 3 because I only needed something that was small, lightweight, wanted to get me from A to B, and like you were saying, that extra $1,000 may not mean as much to some, but it is a game changer for me personally because I get to put that where I want. Now I have $1,000 of extra income over the course of the year that I can put towards something sidebar. I can help better my retirement fund, or I can throw extra money at Tesla to invest in them, or I have the option now that I didn't have before. And I think those people that realize that potential for that option and have a need for maybe a secondary vehicle, that's probably who Aptera is focusing on. Tesla, very different market, very different ideology when it comes to producing vehicles. So they're gonna go for the families. They're gonna go for the people that only have 1 vehicle and 6 kids. That kind of thing. That's kind of their niche. And so they've formatted vehicles, not necessarily the Model 3 in that 6 kids case, but they've formatted their vehicles such that if you're a 1-car family, they've got you covered.
Yeah, I think like the Model Y, you can say it's like a Swiss Army knife. Like it has very good performance, dual motor, good traction, it's affordable now. I think now with tax incentives, because that one still qualifies for the 7,500. Yeah, currently Model Y. It was just announced that it was the most popular vehicle in the world, Q1. I don't know if you saw that news.
Yes. So I saw that last night while I was typing up my notes. I'm like, oh, I'm doing math and they're dropping bombs. I'm okay. All right. I'm making 2 videos. But yeah, it's
So what makes their vehicle like a big niche is that the reason why like Model Y is really popular is because it does everything. It has a hatchback. It can do 5-seater, 7-seater. Though with the Aptera, likely the person, not in all, and I think maybe in a majority of cases, it's going to be a secondary vehicle. But then again, it depends if they have like a huge fleet adoption, because they announced one company, they're very interested for their fleet applications, where there might be a huge market when it comes to fleets, and that can be a great revenue for them. But of course, again, what really I think caught our eye is when they first announced, $25,000. And at that price, that totally makes sense to even buy an extra vehicle that really broadens the market, unless people don't have enough space for another vehicle, which is a big case in a lot of parts of the world. But regardless, that $25,000, that kind of market is completely different compared to once you start inching into the 30s. I think it really like drops down their adoptability. That's one thing I'm concerned with. But of course, again, I mean, this is just what they're doing is just completely normal. I mean, it's similar to like Tesla. They start off with the more expensive vehicle. They're going to launch the Cybertruck. They're going to launch the most expensive one because it has the highest margins and it generates the most revenue to accommodate for all the R&D and capital that the billions of dollars they've been investing in. So they need to, they need to hit the ground running basically, and that's why the launch vehicles tend to be more expensive. So the other question is, okay, Aptera launches, the launch vehicle. How many? Did they already agree that it's just going to be 2,000 units, and then they'll stop?
So, okay, this is one of the more confusing points to Aptera in general that I think a lot of people are like kind of missing a little bit, I guess. But yeah, to your previous point before I get into that, Aptera is really weird in the sense that they're not necessarily releasing their biggest and best right off the bat. They're kind of middle of the road. Like if you ever have gone to the website and like spec'd your car as low as possible, that 25.9, if you've ever spec'd it as high as you can, that bad boy will hit $52,000. So
The 1,000-mile range tri-motor.
yeah, thousand range tri-motor, raid, what do you call that? The camping package, the
The
off-road
off-road.
package. If you put all that stuff in there, you make it like all the bells and whistles. That thing is over 50 grand, and like their launch edition to me was kind of like a great middle ground because it was like, okay, what are most people ordering? They're ordering the 400, 600, 1,000. The 1,000 and 600 we haven't finished engineering yet, so we're going to go ahead and put the 400 because that is the most range we can give right now, not comfortably, what do you call it, confidently, and we'll kind of add and subtract off of there for what we want to do for the 250 and the 600 and 1,000. So it was kind of a middle
Currently,
ground there.
they've only validated the 400 model one because
Exactly.
they would still have to validate the 250, and I'm assuming also if it's a dual motor, because right now they're only validating the tri-motor. But then, of course, like he said, I mean, this is not a four-wheel vehicle; it's a auto cycle. So the regulations for them to validate it is probably very simple compared to the regulatory environment of a four-wheel vehicle.
Absolutely.
I think that's why. What's his name? The CEO, one of the CEOs. There's multiple CEOs, but the guy that you just brought up.
So Chris was the one that I brought
Yeah,
up a little
Chris.
while ago, and then there's
Yeah, he said for
Steve.
them to validate the other models and variants wouldn't be very difficult because it's
Yeah.
very similar, and it wouldn't be hard to go through the validation process, which I can completely understand.
Absolutely. Oh wait. Oh shoot. I lost my train of thought because I skipped back to one thing and okay, wait a minute. Oh, we had a thing we were talking about before. Um,
You're talking about how like Tesla Model 3, Model Y, it's different. We were talking about the fleet, possible fleets,
oh yeah, fleet orders and
ordering
stuff
more
like that.
vehicles. Yeah.
Yeah, I their demographics, like how they're going to format their vehicles, is very different. Like Tesla is a semi, and I agree with the fact that the semis needed to become electric at some point or another, and why not sooner than later. But yeah, I don't see Aptera making a semi. Like more than likely, what they're gonna do, like their biggest vehicle is probably gonna be like the Sprinter van. Have you seen those guys on the road?
Sprinter, you mean like the Dodge and the Mercedes?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, those
I know what
delivery
Sprinter
trucks.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazon. Sorry, that Amazon trucks, like the little delivery ones. I think that's the biggest vehicle Aptera is gonna end up making.
Yeah, like Aptera, I mean not Aptera, Amazon. Yeah, they have a bunch of variants. It seems like I don't know if they're independent contractors, but a lot of people deliver Amazon stuff. Maybe it's FedEx or UPS, but I've seen like non-company vehicles
Yes.
shift around.
Yeah, you can get hired for Amazon to deliver packages. I had a friend that actually stopped doing that because there was a really, really bad neighborhood and they stole her stuff. So, yeah, it is a it is a thought in my head that Aptera is going to be more the smaller get the package to the last destination, and Tesla is going to be more the big trucks that get it to the distribution network. So that I see that as the division of labor, I guess, when it comes to electric vehicles, is at least when it comes to fleets, when it and differences between Aptera and Tesla.
I think there's a huge. I mean, I think Aptera. I don't know. They claim that they want to go into the four-wheel vehicle segment, but I think maybe they would try like a three-seater version of the Aptera first, or again make a slightly larger auto cycle, just because of how it's probably like tens of millions of dollars less capital to perform these validations and testing and all the regulations and safety to go around. I think for them, I think that'd be a great niche opportunity. I don't know the exact numbers, of course, but I'm assuming it's a huge advantage to be considered an auto cycle for them to get their product on the road compared to like Rivian and Lucid. I mean, of course they're luxury vehicles, but again, it's probably like double, triple the amount of capital once you add that extra wheel. It's a
Absolutely.
completely different regulatory body.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to point two. We had to reconvene after a delightful Zoom intermission. All right, so the second point. Oh wait, okay, that we kind of covered the second point already. The fact that
Yeah,
it's
we
a
kind
two
of
seater.
covered it. It creates a niche market
Yeah,
that it's
yeah,
a
it
two seat.
creates a niche market. Yeah, that's yeah. We already talked about that. I'll go ahead and skip
We
that.
can go on to three safety.
Yeah, three is how safe the vehicle is. Man, I so there was a lot that I had to overcome from a personal standpoint because I've been in one accident in my life. And I said to myself, never again am I going to be in that situation. Of course, that's not something I can decide necessarily, but yeah, I wanted to make sure that whatever vehicle that I got, because this is the last vehicle I plan on buying, that it was as safe as humanly possible. So I did extensive research on the safety features and all that kind of stuff and what should and shouldn't be in an auto cycle. There was a lot. But yeah, before I get into that, because we had a format, I'm jumping the format already. What are your thoughts on the safety aspects of Aptera? Like what do you see that you like? What do you see that you don't like? That kind of stuff.
I just thought of this from the top of my head. I think maybe the CEO talked about it. One thing from a front collision that Aptera has a huge advantage. The motors are inboard, not inboard. They're in wheel. So I think the crumple zone is even better because of that compared to a Tesla. But I believe the auto manufacturers, they designed when the front end crumples that the drivetrain actually shifts downward. It shifts lower into the vehicle, I think, as it crumbles. So I don't know if that really makes a big difference, but I think it's maybe a big advantage for that. And then, of course, yeah, so I think, when they're making the claims and their validation that the car will perform well in a front and a rear collision because, of such large crumple zones. I
Hmm.
believe it. They haven't. One thing I would love to see though is how this vehicle would do in a T-bone, because I think that would be probably the worst case scenario for them. In a lot of situations, the advantage for Aptera, because it is a light vehicle, is huge. If you hit anything that's static, the lighter you are, the better it is, because in the whole system, there's less kinetic energy. So being light is very good. And so your crumple zones work better at higher speeds. But yeah, in a T-bone though, I think this it might be a little. I think it might perform poorly because there is no crumple zone in a T-bone collision unless it hits the wheel first, maybe. But if it hits the cabin directly, because it's majority of the vehicle that's exposed on the side is just the cabin. Only the front corner could provide a possible crumple zone. The arms, the upper and lower control arms of the suspension. So anyhow, so say a Model Y, something that weighs like 4,500, 5,000 pounds, hits the side of the Aptera. One, there's no crumple zone because it's just the CPM polymer, whatever the structure is. And then also you don't have, from what they've announced, there is no airbags in the pillar or in the seats. So I think maybe if there's enough space in the cabin, you're okay. But that's one thing I'd be really concerned in, because again, being a light vehicle, getting hit by something that's like 4,000 or 5,000 pounds, and many vehicles are well above that now, especially electric vehicles. It's easy to be 4,000 or 5,000 pounds, or even 7,300 pounds.
Absolutely.
The occupants are going to experience some real acceleration in the Aptera, only being 2,000 pounds. So that's one thing that's really concerning to me. So from the biggest I think problem with Aptera is how niche it is, and they need to do as much as they can for it to be as adoptable as possible, to have the market be as broad. So I think as long as they can be like safer than a Prius or as safe as a Prius, I think their adoptability should be fine. But a big thing, like you said, a lot of people have experienced really bad accidents and they're not willing to take that risk. That's why Tesla's been doing very well. I mean, over year, they're still the safest vehicles on the road. One guy tried to kill his family and drove off a cliff, and they fell down 5-6 stories, and they all survived. I mean, that's just incredible. And there wasn't even a battery fire too, not to mention.
It's funny enough, I remember reading that story and I half thought somebody was like writing a prank article. So I looked around and I was like, oh, that's actually a thing. Like, what is going on in that man's life? Like, what? Yeah, neither here nor there. But the fact that the Tesla was capable of surviving intentional attempts, what it was.
Like a movie, such Die Hard.
Yeah. So
Villain gets driven off the cliff, and they normally perish. You normally don't survive.
I thought Fast and Furious when I first read that article. So I'm like, somebody's marketing for Fast 10, aren't they? This is a gag. Yeah. So yeah, the fact that
Anyhow, the T-bone situation is something I'd be concerned about, because when the occupants will experience a lot of acceleration, and we don't know, depending on your size, if you're 6 foot or if you're 5 foot, where your head is going to be traveling during that impact, and is it going to hit the side of the cabin? And the fact that there's no there's no airbags in the pillar or in the seats, I think is a big concern, and that's going to hurt the adoptability of the vehicle. When you buy a Tesla, you don't think about that.
Right. Okay. So in that regard, there was a really, really good video. Taylor VV that put out this video covering basically all of the major ins and outs of safety and whatnot with the Aptera. Some of the stuff that he researched, I ended up researching myself. Aptera, I think, does have a distinct disadvantage when it comes to a side impact collision, a T-bone, that kind of thing. The thing about T-bones is they're not even the most common, they're not even top 3 most common types of accidents that occur. It's usually a front end collision, back end collision. There was another one.
And probably static, right? Just running into something.
Yeah, static objects. That was another thing. It was like they're technically T-boning is the fourth, in line. So fourth is still big, but it is not as common as what you would actually encounter. Head-on collision specifically was my big thought process. And when it comes to head-on collisions, I believe that because there's no chance of the wheel the hub motor or anything like that coming in to the cabin, that's an inherent advantage because one of the things that happened when I had my accident was the wheel well was split open and the wheel was like sitting, it was like there. I'm like, oh,
It
if
became an occupant.
yeah, it became an occupant. If my foot was there, I would have no foot. So
Jesus
it was
Christ.
another one of those things. It was just like, okay,
What kind of car?
it was a an older vehicle. It was a really old Honda. I can't remember the. Oh goodness, it was a
Ford Prelude.
no. It was one of the little. It was one of the other Prelude. There we
CRX?
go.
Oh, it was a Prelude.
Yeah.
What, do you know
So
what generation?
it was a 1989 Honda Prelude, and
I think that's like the second gen one.
yeah,
But it kind of looks like an MR2.
yeah. It reminds me of an MR2. It also looks a little bit like oh, what's that other boxy thing? You know, it is a Civic with one door instead of
Hmm.
the two doors on the side. Anyway, yeah, that car was tiny. It was amazing. It was my favorite car up until I got the Type R. But yeah, that first wreck, very bad. I was like, yeah, that's not gonna happen to me again. But yeah, so that whole scenario made me leery of front end collisions, and Taylosive did a really good job of talking about the things that would help an Aptera when it comes to front end collisions. And of course, because it has a ridiculously long rear hatch, there's essentially nothing to worry about from a rear end collision. T-boning, I expect that thing to roll because it is a very rounded shape.
Yeah, I
Maybe.
think actually, I think during a Q&A, the CEO actually talked about it. I just remember now.
Mhm.
Because the Aptera is smooth, I think either the car will go above you or below you,
Oh yeah,
unless it
yeah.
hits you dead on. So that's another thing, even like in a front end collision, if you don't get hit like dead on in the cabin, like perfectly perpendicular, I wonder if you just get deflected
Yeah. So
because
it
it's
would
so
make
strong and so
sense.
smooth.
Yeah, yeah, it would make sense, especially because of like the smoothness factor. It might end up, ooh, that might actually end up being worse for the other driver because it'd be like a ramp.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know why I forgot about that. Yeah, but that's one advantage that the Aptera does have, that it is smooth and it's hard to, as you can say, hit it like perpendicular. Um, but I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, we get to see in the real world.
Yeah,
But,
so if
God forbid, it's like perpendicular head on.
yeah, oh man,
You
so
know,
if Sandy has anything,
what's the occupants gonna? What are they gonna experience? In terms of the acceleration, the whiplash, because they're missing those two airbags.
right? Shoot, if Sandy has anything to say about it, we're gonna see some Apteras in September. So
Yeah.
we'll get that crash test stuff going pretty quick. But yeah, no,
So was your accident like right head on, or no? Did they hit like your front fender majority?
so this was one of those cases where cell phones were just starting to become fairly popular. This man did not even notice that he had left his lane until it was too late, and I was kind of in disbelief. Okay, it was myself, a center lane for turning, and the other lane. So it was just I guess a three lane. He was coming into that lane like he was going to turn, and I'm like, oh, too easy. He's going to make that turn. I don't, I'm just going to keep on moving along. It didn't even register that it was something that I should be caring about until he passed that other double line into where I was at. I'm like, okay, maybe I should make an evasive maneuver. So I slowed down in an effort to minimize the impact because I wasn't going to be able to dodge it unless I was going to jump into the center lane, risking an accident myself, or jump into the ditch where I didn't. I don't want to be there. I'm a college student. I don't have the money for another car. I need to save my car. So slowed down to a stop. Was about to put it in reverse and try to kind of steer out of the terrible new driver. Worst possible scenario I could think of was a head-on collision, and I did not know how to react. Anyway, put the car in reverse. As soon as I put it in reverse, bam, as close to a head-on as you can call it, and it was
Okay.
not a small vehicle. So
Mhm.
anyway, yeah, it was a thing. But yeah, so that scenario with an Aptera, I would assume, because again the smooth shape, it could become a ramp, and I want to know how that. Well, no, actually, because they are just now starting to look at safety of the people around the vehicle as opposed to the occupants. NIFSTA, the people that do crash test
NHTSA.
ratings. NIFSTA, yeah, there you go.
NHTSA. I think it's with a T.
NIT,
National NHTSA. Yeah, it's
National.
with a T because Transportation
Yeah,
Association.
you're right. Okay. But yeah, so NHTSA just started looking at outside occupants. Like, is this vehicle going to take out the people? Like, if somebody's in a crosswalk, is it going to take them out, or they have a chance? That metric became a lot more important with the advent of larger, heavier trucks, Hummer, and all that kind of stuff, because now we have so much inertia coming at an individual that there's a much less chance that they'll survive. And because they're taking a look at that, I'm wondering if that's going to have some kind of effect on the Aptera at some point or another, because the design of the vehicle, depending on the crumple zone, now I'm thinking about it, it could actually become like a ramp or something.
Yeah, I think it's called pedestrian protection
Yeah,
features.
yeah, exactly. And
So the hoods of some vehicles are designed specifically for the pedestrian impact. But because Aptera of course is an auto cycle, I'm not sure what the regulations are regarding that. So
right, from what I understand it, the regulations are very different, very loose compared to automobiles, like actual cars, because they cars are bigger and heavier than a motorcycle, or in Aptera's case, an autocycle. So they're a lot less strict. But because Aptera is going to be going through most of that crash testing, I assume that they're going to be about as safe for the occupant and the pedestrians or bike riders around them as can be expected of an actual car. So let me see here.
next one is profitability.
Profitability. Yes. So profitability is uncertain. This is my favorite topic out of the whole thing, because I thought this was kind of fun. I took a look at a bunch of companies, but we're gonna get to that in a second here. What are your thoughts with respect to profitability? Like, what jumps out at you as things that are less than ideal when it comes to. Sorry, my camera just moved, and I'm not sure why. Sorry, less than ideal when it comes to profitability.
I think it's just a general idea or general sense because in the car market, it's very, very small margins. Like Toyota, Honda, companies that have been here for a long time, they only make, I think, 10 to 15% max on margins. In a lot of situations, they lose on selling vehicles, especially now EVs. Mach E is losing a lot of money. But generally, that's just because, when they're ramping up, it's very hard for them to reduce price over time. And also, they make money on the back end with manufacturing parts. A lot of companies, a lot of car companies make a lot of their revenue or profits from that. But just in general, it's just the car market is extremely difficult. Now, this is an auto cycle, maybe it's a little bit different, but maybe it's a good indication that maybe the launch vehicle is 35,000, that they're just starting with that price. Maybe that means that there's still a lot of lean manufacturing that can reduce it well under 30,000. But just in general, like Elon, from what Elon keeps reiterating, and I think it just becomes stronger and stronger every day. Prototyping is easy, production is hard, and profitability is hard. And we're not talking about making toothbrushes. With cars, it's very difficult because of how much capital it takes to invest, how competitive the market is. There's been thousands of automakers previously that have failed. The only car companies that have not failed are Ford and Tesla.
Absolutely.
Tesla is a needle in the haystack. Ford is a needle in the haystack. It's very difficult to become profitable. So that's why Aptera needs to do the least amount of damage to their applicability or their adoption for that sense. So I just think that's the biggest thing, that production is hard, profitability is hard, because there's just so many factors developing those supply chains. Making a buck, it's not easy, and that's why Sandy Monroe they emphasize on, hey, if you want, probably the best answer to profitability is to do scale quickly, not scale quickly, but start at a high scale of production. Don't try to build a hand make like 5 cars a week or 20 cars a week. Start from day one, with 2 shifts or 1 shifts, and you're producing 2 to 5,000 vehicles a year. Because otherwise, it's going to be hard. I think Sandy says, telling your operator to make 1 car a day and then telling them 2 months later to make 2 cars a day, they're going to say, what the heck?
Yeah, this is wild. Okay, so I was just gonna ask you how closely you followed Sandy because
I follow him a lot. I think he's great. I mean, I find him very entertaining. There was a video when he was drunk. It was pretty awesome. I don't know if you saw that video.
Yeah, I
when
did.
He was drunk. He really let loose, and it was amazing.
Like,
but I think that guy is, that guy. I'm a fan of him, and of course, he's extremely knowledgeable, and you don't have to take his words with a grain of salt. That guy has the resume to back it up. That guy is the real deal. He's an Elon in a different world.
Absolutely. So, part of the thing that makes me a lot less apprehensive when it comes to Aptera's profitability is that they are doing everything they can to minimize components. From what I understand of the situation, there are 2 big factors that are the reason why vehicles end up being expensive. One is the paint process, which is 80% of the cost. And then there's the number of components that they have to source and manufacture and things of that nature. So since Aptera is not painting that we know
they're
of,
gonna do wraps.
Yeah, they're doing wraps or what was it, paint protection film or something like that, color paint protection film. One of those 2 things they're going to end up doing, and they are going for a minimum number of components. They have 6 sub-assemblies, which is unheard of for a vehicle. Like usually they have like starting at 20. So yeah, 6 sub-assemblies, minimal number of parts, easy off the shelf to repair type parts. Some of them are engineered, like their hub motors and their inverters and that kind of stuff. You can't really get around that. But the fact that they're taking such a minimalistic approach from the outset, and the fact that they're trying to ramp up, like Sandy was talking about in his videos, like you have to hit the ground running, like because they're trying to do that kind of stuff, I have a lot fewer doubts than what I used to have when it came to their profitability. I know that when I first learned about Aptera, it was maybe a year and a half ago. Let me see, it's about 2 years now. But anyway, when I first learned about them, they were talking about how they were going to start making like 30 or 40 or something like that in a month or something. Like it was a really small number, and I was like, that means you're gonna need hundreds of millions of dollars. Like Tesla had a burn rate of like on average of $600 something million a year, and that was because they started off slow. So I don't think in this particular climate of financial turmoil, they're going to be able to make it through that. And so when they announced that, hey, we're going to be making 20, 30, 40 vehicles a day, and then putting a second shift on to make 80 vehicles a day, and to me, that was the seal the deal profitability way faster than Tesla plan, essentially. So profitability is not as big a concern to me as it was 2 years ago, but yeah, it is still something that, because of the way markets are right now, it is going to be difficult for them to become profitable without having to take on a lot of debt. And the debt part is what I'm concerned about. Profitability, not really too concerned, but if they have to take out a bunch of loans, ATVM loan and all that kind of stuff, excuse me, depending on how they have to pay that back, when they have to pay that back, the percentage of interest on the loan, that kind of stuff can end up making or breaking a company from the other side of things, having their profits eaten away by
working for interest payment.
Yeah, expenses. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's one thing I am concerned also about is at least publicly they haven't announced of any how the private equity has been going on.
Oh, goodness, sorry.
No worries. Yeah, one of my concerns is that they haven't announced any updates on the private equity raising in Europe and the Middle East. And as time goes on, it's going to be, as interest rates rise, it's going to be harder and harder for them to raise capital because investors will be less likely to be willing to risk their money in a car manufacturing environment because the margins are very difficult and it's hard to make like really good returns on a car company.
Okay.
So that's one thing I'm a little worried about.
Yeah. So,
Because it's going to be June, like in 2 days, and then the
oh,
CEO of Aptera said whatever.
sorry. You just reminded me we're halfway through the year. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, yeah, it's June 2023, and the I keep forgetting it. What's his name? Tim? What's the CEO's name?
Oh, so there's Steve Fambro and Chris.
Chris. Yeah,
Oh, not wait. Is that
Chris Fambro or what's his name?
no?
Last
It's not
name?
Fambro. Wait
Chris.
a second. Wait a second. I messed that. I know I messed that up because wait a second. Wait a second. Okay. Aptera CEO. Man, see, this is where my comment section is going to crucify me over here because I can't even remember the CEO's names. Chris Anthony
He
is
has two first names like Ricky Bobby.
yeah, there's Chris Anthony, and then there's another guy who I know his
Steve,
first name is
Steve
Steve.
I think it's Steve Fambro or
It is Steve
Steve.
Fambro. Woo! Oh man, I'm so glad I called that right the first time. All right. So yeah.
Yeah, so Chris said that it's going to take at least a year once they get enough, once they raise the capital to start production. Well, I think they already said they're going to start production. I think late 2024, and so I think it's going to be 2025 because we haven't heard unfortunately any updates. And then what's Tesla prices? What are those going to be? 2 years from now? That's
So
another concern. That
yeah, I've been keeping my ear to the ground on that because it is going to be like just imagine a Model 3 being 10,000 less than an Aptera. That would just be a nightmare scenario for Aptera. But a lot of the research that I've been doing is kind of insinuating that the price of the Tesla is not going down a lot more for the time being because they've hit the level of margin that is comfortable for them to be able to both maintain profitability and continue to work on their big factories and that kind of stuff. So
is
theoretically,
that is that accounting for Project Highland?
yes, that's what I'm saying. Like in general, they're trying to push for a lot of stuff where their margins can't be too low, but they can because of the way they produce their vehicle, because of how big their margins were to begin with, they were able to make those big cuts. And so now that they're in that position where they're right at that sweet spot where they can still do what they're trying to do and offer their vehicles at a good price, this is probably about where they're going to stay.
What about their drivetrain? Because Tesla's also coming out with a new drivetrain unit that's apparently $1,000, no rare earth metals.
Yes, so that's going
I
to
don't know. I
be
don't know if that's applicable to Project Highland or if they're going to. Actually, I'm assuming they're going to adopt those new motors to all of their platforms.
yeah, I would assume so. But
Because
that's going to
Tesla's trying
be
to. It seems like Tesla is still continuing to try to reduce as much as they can. I don't
sure.
know if they're also going to do single castings as well for Model 3.
Yes, so all of that stuff is in the works, but what's
Uh-huh.
kind of being a bottleneck at the moment is their mining stuff. The the mo-
Batteries is the biggest thing because they would have done the semi trucks a lot earlier, but I think it was just wouldn't make sense for them to not build 10 Model S's or almost 20 Model 3s compared to just building one semi.
Absolutely. So like their bottlenecks and their need for some margin is what's keeping them from putting that price lower, in my personal opinion, based on the research that I've done. So right where they are right now, they're gonna kind of teeter maybe $1,000 up or down on the price that they have now for their vehicles. I don't think they're gonna go too far from that
Mhm.
for at least for the foreseeable future, for the next 2 years maybe.
Unless I think one of the biggest variabilities in their price fluctuation is also the tax incentives because
Yeah,
they always car companies in general they always adopt their pricing depending on what the incentives are for the consumer.
that is true.
But then again, though, Tesla has shown that they will greatly vary the price based on their inventory count. Like again, their inventory count was low, and the Model Y was certain variants of the Model Y were $20,000 more than they are now, and now they're back down now because inventory went all the way back down where there was no inventory. or no, that inventory was climbing, then they dropped the prices down significantly. So I think I agree with you that maybe the variability, maybe they can drop the price maybe at max 10%.
Right. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So yeah, just to kind of sum that up because we we kind of got off track a little bit, but essentially the profitability of Aptera, just like most companies, is fairly uncertain, especially considering Aptera is a startup. But that factor, I think, will be less of an issue when we see their first quarterly statements from their first maybe 3 or 4 months of production, because I think they're going to hit profitability way faster than even Tesla could, because of the way that they're engineering their stuff, because they're leaning so hard on Sandy and that kind of stuff.
One thing I wanted to talk about. So their recent 10K, they announced that they had a cash burn of 50 million.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw that.
I did see
Um,
that.
so they did reduce their staff by, I think, like 40, 50 employees. I think I calculated, I don't remember off the top of my head, maybe it was like 10 or $15 million
Hmm.
worth of cash burn. So that's one concerning thing, because every day I think to keep at a cash flow burn of 50 million, I think that's $100,000 of cash they burn a day.
Yeah, yeah,
And so if you look at the accelerator program, like currently it seems like it's still doing well. It's still every day you see at least one, two, three more investors at least $10,000.
hmm,
And of course that's being matched by the California, whatever the California, they got a California
yeah.
grant of
The
20
grant.
million.
Yeah,
So it's being matched, but anyhow, but $50 million a year is $50 million a year. The accelerator program is basically, slowing that down significantly. But again, if you don't start production till another year, and if you don't start building that terrace for a whole another year and a half, uh, that's tens of millions of dollars additional they have to raise. So they have to get to production as quickly as possible, because they are burning a lot of cash, and it's as time goes on in these economic times with interest rates raising, it's going to be harder and harder for them to raise capital or even get a better deal on when they're gaining capital.
gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think a little bit of what is going to, or what has been and what is going to continue to keep Aptera out of the red, is that the partnership with CPC, I don't think that they're outright paying for those dies right now. What I think is happening is the the dies and the castings and what have you for the CPC group's presses. I think they are fronting them for that in return for some kind of equity in the company, so that they can get to production tooling and get to production before they run out of money.
Yeah, was that Aptera? I think Aptera Owners Club. I think he discussed that, right?
Absolutely, he was one of the many folks, but like he put that, like he made that video, and I was like, oh, maybe I should have made that video, because my brain was spinning around like, how in the world are they affording this stuff? Because dies. So there were unofficial numbers about how much it costs for dies, and it is in the tens of millions of dollars for an entire casting, say the size of the Aptera, like tens of
Yeah.
millions. And so, how did they pay for that tens of millions and they only have 14 million in the accelerator club? Like, how did that work? So yeah, what I was thinking, and what Steve from Aptera Owners Club said, is that they were probably being fronted those castings for the purpose of exchanging equity in the company later on. Let's
And
see.
also, so what's his name? Sandy Monroe was talking about how in September they're going to be building the validation vehicles, I believe.
Hmm.
And that's going to, of course, those are basically hand built. Those again are going to be very expensive. Even though they reduced their employees, they're still going to have a lot of expenses coming. But anyway, nobody truly knows the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see.
All right.
But
Oh, we already.
hopefully the private equity is going well.
So we already basically hit on point five. What I'm going to add to that point. By the way, point five was cash flow burn of 50 million. What
Yep.
I'm going to add to that is that I mentioned earlier, Tesla was spending $667 million per year on average. So Aptera's burn rate for for comparing apples to apples, another electric company, exclusively electric car company, their burn rate is actually phenomenal. Like it's not even a tenth of what Tesla was doing. Mind you, they don't have that much funding, but their burn rate is such that if they can get even a tenth of what Elon was able to get for his starting of Tesla and that kind of stuff, they'll be just fine. I want to see who's going to drop that $100 million to get them into production, because yeah, whoever makes that investment is going to be not only a hero to the community of people that love the Aptera, but kind of an innovator, or an assistant in the innovation of technologies for vehicles as we know them. So yeah, who knows, man? Like that's basically for burn rate. Aptera is doing pretty well, but 50 million is still a very significant amount of money.
What I would say about the Tesla, though, I mean, that the vehicle that they were launching with that Model S, are you talking about like, was that at the time Roadster, or that was that Model S that they were trying to launch?
So for the first three, 2.5, 3 years that they were producing vehicles, they were only producing that Roadster. During that
Their
time,
vehicle, I think the starting price was like $150,000.
yes, and that helped a lot with the burn rate. The burn rate for the first 2 or 3 years for Tesla was very similar to the burn rate of Aptera's right now. So
Okay.
they were 54 million, 60 something million, 70 something million, and then all heck broke loose when they started building the Gigafactory, and they jumped up to like a 1.1 billion or something like that. It was their burn rate was very modest until they built their own factory. That's another advantage that I think Aptera may have in that respect, as far as burn rates go, is they're never going to have to build that gigantic factory. All they're doing is putting in tooling and changing some wires, according to Chris during the presentation they just did.
Yeah, the fact that they don't have a paint booth, a lot less hydrocarbons, a lot less floor space required, a lot less capital required, a lot less of a quality control required. So, yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. It would be interesting to me actually in the future. That one thing I thought that would be really cool is, oh yeah, for Tesla to drop their prices even more. If they just got rid of, for the Model 3 and Y, if they got rid of the paint factory. I mean, what if they just came out with a silver color that's like some kind of, I don't know, that eliminates paint.
So they
Like how
could
they're doing
do
with the Cybertruck.
like a brushed or a polished aluminum. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so if they come out with a specific alloy that's not gonna rust. I mean, just like what they're doing with the Cybertruck. If they did that same application for the Model 3 and Y, I wonder how much more they could drop their prices with that.
Getting rid of painting in general.
Yeah,
Oh
me
man.
personally, I love the way metal looks, like on planes, like the chrome or even like the raw finish aluminum, like even how the Cybertruck looks. Like I love that. I love that simplicity. I love that efficiency. That's why Aptera is such a cool idea. Is just the efficiency
Right.
aspect. So I feel like maybe that's something. I don't know. I don't think Tesla is going to necessarily go with that, but maybe they will for their Model 3 Y and their next gen vehicles, that they will eliminate painting.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
that would
that
be
can
cool.
drop the price huge. In the amount of employees it takes, and the amount of space it takes in the factory, and the equipment and the quality control, it costs God knows how much money, and not to mention all the pollution to have paint. So that's why the Cybertruck, they're not doing that, which is pretty crazy. I mean, that's like, when was the last time has there been a production vehicle with no paint on it?
Right.
That's amazing. So,
Oh yeah.
anyhow.
I agree. No, that to see that happen, I think at that point there would be no room for error when it comes to the bigger automakers. Like if they eliminated paint, if Tesla eliminated paint, then like every automaker would have to either get in line or go out of business. Like essentially that would be their alternatives. So
And if you
I
have a robo taxi, you don't own the vehicle. Why would you care what color the vehicle is that picks you up in?
oh, that's true.
That's of course, if I mean, that's highly speculative if Tesla can actually do robo taxi, but I'm predicting maybe by the end of the decade, maybe they can pull it off, but nobody knows yet. Nobody knows. Not even Elon knows, unfortunately,
Right.
when that's going to happen, or if. So,
All
anyhow,
right. All right. So point six doesn't qualify for state and federal rebate incentives. Yeah, that is what it is, man. That's kind of That's it. That's it. They don't qualify, and that is very disappointing. Even though Aptera is pushing for that legislation to be changed, uh, what does it say? There's a guide that I watch that says pay for the product as it is, not for the features that are going to come out on it. I can't remember his name right this second, but it's going to come to me later.
Oh,
Um,
crap. Is that Tailosive? That's Tailosive. Yeah.
ye-
Yeah,
Probably yes.
Tailosive. Yeah, that
Okay.
was him.
So yeah, when he said that, I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense. And so with Aptera, you have to think about that in frames of, okay, I'm buying this assuming that there are no tax incentives until there are. And so the fact that there are no tax incentives, of course, puts them in that line with the Tesla Model 3. And that's why the comparison essentially has to be made for every single buyer out there. Okay, do I want an Aptera or do I want a Model 3 from a standpoint of price? Because that is a lot of what people do when they shop for cars. Okay, what's the lowest price that I can get away with that actually suits my needs? That's usually what they go for. And
And
so,
what's also crazy in the car market too is that now how bad the car market is in terms of pricing. Everything is expensive. So how much the buying power, especially when interest rates go up, Elon even talked about this too. The
mhm,
buying power of consumers is going less and less because a lot of people look at monthly payments, and as time goes on and interest rates rise, you're gonna have consumers are gonna have less and less of a buying power. So there's gonna be less people who are gonna be just even able to afford a vehicle and a secondary vehicle like the Aptera,
right.
which makes it more niche and nation. That
Oh,
would cause problems. Yeah,
actually,
we have.
sorry, you just hit on a point that I did actually do research on. The number of people that have a secondary vehicle is right around 40-ish million. And in my head, I was like, that's the approximate market for Aptera. Essentially, there are 40 million people out there who have the disposable income to pick up another vehicle. And if that's their commuter vehicle, then Aptera is perfect for that. So in a way, the researching for this video kind of solidified in my head what I knew their market to be. The people that want another car, the people that are in college that can't necessarily afford or want 4 seats, that sorry, 5 seats, that kind of thing. Yeah, I was basically done with my point, which is fantastic because we ran out of time there. But all right, so
I wanted to elaborate just a little bit more on that point
sure,
on the second vehicle. Yeah.
absolutely.
So currently, I bought a secondary vehicle at the time, which was a Fiat 500e. But the purchase price of that Fiat 500e was like 2013 with 60,000 miles on it. I bought it because it was a good commuter car from city to city. It gets about 60 miles range, even though with that high miles. And then also it has a liquid cooled battery pack, which I liked for a long-term perspective of reliability. Anyhow, I bought that for $4,000. That was back in 2019, 2020, right before the car market went crazy. So I got
Yeah,
a really good deal on a Fiat 500e. But my point is, what's the buying power of somebody's budget for a secondary vehicle? Is it a $35,000 Aptera?
that is a
Or is
good
it just a
point.
$10,000 vehicle or $15,000 vehicle?
So it was
That's
actually very similar to the lower end of what you would expect to see for like a Civic or some like some small commuter cars are what people were picking up as their secondary vehicles. And so that's a very good point. What really is the buying power of somebody who is picking up a second vehicle? They might have splurged a little bit on that BMW, and now they want to, have uh, something small and simple so they don't bust it up on the way to work or something.
like I have a coworker, for example, we're making almost six figures.
Hmm.
He has like a BMW 5 Series, but he's not going to be buying an additional vehicle. He's going to be selling that BMW for a more economical vehicle, like a Prius.
Yep.
So, I mean, like from my anecdotal personal experience, like my secondary buying power, I only purchased a $4,000 vehicle for commuting. My friend who has but we live in LA, the amount of space and cost, but anyhow, he's selling his BMW and he's going to sell it for by 15 to 20 grand. He's going to buy something more economical like a Prius. He's
Absolutely.
not going to be buying another secondary vehicle. So that's one thing I'm concerned with, as that makes it harder. That's why they have to drive the cost down. So hopefully, they can achieve a much lower price, or they can at least validate the cheaper version of the vehicle and get it out there. I think 250 miles for a solar electric vehicle is plenty.
Right. All right. Let's see. Oh, We already talked about this one as well. No updates on private equity fundraising. I mean, to be most accurate, they have given an update in saying that they don't have it yet. So, yeah, I'm waiting for that day where they get the what do you call it? Inspired billionaire, and so that they can drop a couple 100 million and get that thing going. But yeah, essentially, we already talked about point seven here.
I mean, it's been a while, and they said that they have a lot of networking out there. They're very familiar with the people out in the Middle East and in Europe.
Yeah.
I feel like there has to be some people, who don't really care about money and just want to, be a part of a great idea. I mean, that's a lot of the accelerator program. A lot of people are not very knowledgeable necessarily on business, but they just want to support a great idea, and why not?
So I did something of a video on that topic as to why anybody couldn't see the value in Aptera or the want to do the right thing. And a point that I made was essentially, in my head, there is nothing that makes Aptera a bad buy from a perspective of an investor, except for the stuff that normally affects businesses. Oh, are you still there? Oh, what happened?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, I'm making sure because I my screen froze for like a half second. Okay, so yeah, there's nothing really from a investor's perspective that gets your goat about Aptera, except for the stuff that you would normally look at. Oh, maybe the profitability is not quite there yet. We don't have a knowledge on when they're going to put their first vehicles out. They that the normal stuff that startups have to worry about is the stuff that Aptera has to worry about, and what you would have to think about as an investor to invest in Aptera. But
Have you
barring
been
that,
looking at? Sorry, I cut you off.
oh, go ahead.
What were you saying?
Oh yeah, so
I know you.
so by and large, there's nothing in my head that would make Aptera a bad buy for even million and billionaires. But at the same time, I am not a million or billionaire, so there's something going on in their heads that makes them averse or at least hesitant about Aptera in the first place. So I'm sorry, what were you saying?
How has your dilution been in the company since you invested? I know that through regulation, companies have to publicly announce, even if they're public or private, what options of dilution that they will be going for in terms of raising capital. So how has your experience been being a Tesla?
Sure. So
an Aptera shareholder.
Dilution, because all of our shares, like let's see, the accelerator program.
You're in different series, like there's Series A, B funding,
Yes.
angel investment funding.
Yeah. So because we are Class B stock, we are only given the voting rights that are associated specifically with changing the nature of the investment. So if they say, oh, we want to do a stock split, Class B shares would have the ability to vote on that. If Aptera said, we want to go out of business or something, then we would have the ability to vote on that. But by and large, we don't have any actual voting power beyond stuff that affects the stock itself. When it came to dilution specifically, essentially it plays out about how you would expect for standard dilution of a company. You would have the people that put the most money in, the CEOs and all that kind of stuff, they would get money first, and then there's another class of share. I think it was Class A.
The right now the executives are getting a lot of I don't know how many shares or what the value is, but they are getting a lot of I forget what the term is for. They're getting in terms of pay. They're getting they're both their salary of 200 to 300 grand,
Equity,
and
equity.
also their not reimbursement. What is it called?
So they're getting they're being given equity in the company as compensation for
Yeah,
working with Aptera.
yeah. Part of their compensation package is both cash and shares
Yeah.
as well.
Yep. So that they, of course, they're going to get paid out first on that. I think Class B is the last to be paid if there's money left. So for dilution, I mean, it's about what I expect for any startup company. All right, you got all the people that were putting risk out there, they're thinking about it, doing all that kind of stuff. They're the guys that are going to get money basically out of the scenario. Like there's not a, hey, you guys are going to get your money back after the fact. So yeah. Let me see. Let's see. Oh, best scenario. Sorry, this is point number 8. Under best case scenario, they won't start production until 2025. I was curious about how you came to that conclusion specifically.
Yeah, just that Chris, the CEO, said that once they raise the capital, it'll be a year after they'll start production, and we're already in June. So my speculation is a year and a half from now, because we still haven't heard any updates.
That is true. Okay. Yeah, no, I see that. So that burn rate that we talked about previously is going to become a factor there. I think because they are so incentivized to get going and get going fast, they're going to probably end up leaning a lot on CPC Group to get them over the hurdles that it's going to take to make it to production if they do not get their big investor. So much so that in a way I am a little bit concerned about whether or not Chris and Steve are willing to give up some control in the company to make Aptera happen. I don't know what their mindset is on that, besides the fact that when they first started the idea of Aptera, they they had an issue where they gave up control where they probably should not have. If they are extremely hardline about whether or not they want to give away control of the company, which I assume they are because that's what they've shown to be in the past. I don't know how far CPC is willing to go to help them to get to production. If it is, oh, we're going to just get you there and then you make sure that we get our equity or what have you. But if it does actually go out to 2025, if they do need to validate and redo a bunch of stuff and they don't actually get cars in people's hands until 2025, what is the practical cost, not necessarily the capital cost of that endeavor? Like what is going to happen if CPC says, we did all this investing, but I think this is the line here unless you let us have some control of the company. Like what would that mean for Aptera? Like that's my issue with that. Let's see. Do you have thoughts to add there?
No.
Fair enough. All right. Point number 9. Tesla is continuing to reduce prices and increase quality. That, man, like we just talked about that as well. If Tesla gets too much more inexpensive or too much better, it's going to become an issue with respect to value proposition as to whether or not you should get an Aptera over a Tesla.
Yeah, the value proposition is a huge concern.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, where is Tesla going to be a year and a half from now?
Absolutely.
Luckily, their interiors and exteriors, the quality is improving. So it's not 2018 anymore. Like 2023 Teslas are a bit better, quite a bit better.
Absolutely.
Okay. And of course, the quality for Aptera is uncertain. They are doing a lot of things to mitigate any quorums in their manufacturing process by reducing parts, making things very simple. But again, talk is cheap, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
So we'll see how Aptera does.
Yeah. So to me, that kind of harkens back to the previous point as well. Considering the fact that if they don't start production until 2025, it's going to be just that much more difficult for them to make that value proposition gap. So yeah, I'm hoping they get there sooner than later because yeah, Tesla is really a big player and they are
And
really
Tesla's coming
serious.
out with the next gen vehicle as well. I think they'll announce it next year. And
Absolutely.
at what price too? That they're going to build in Mexico. I believe though that from what Elon said, I believe from Giga Mexico that car is not coming to the U.S. market. So
Yeah.
then I'm assuming that they're just going to try to focus to drive the price, continue driving the price down of Model 3 and Y. But who knows? I'm not Elon, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that what you're saying makes sense. It makes logical sense. So, let's see.
And early production models will have very few features till at least 2027.
Yes. Okay.
That's
So,
my highly speculative thing. But what Chris has talked about, the CEO of Aptera, that there's a lot of features that would be great to go into the what is it called? The launch vehicle.
Launch edition, yeah.
Like heated seats, heated steering wheel. What is it called? What's the security system that Tesla has with their cameras?
Sentry mode.
Sentry mode. A lot of these things, unfortunately, are not going to be implemented in the launch vehicles because, again, they're trying to get vehicles just out there. They're going to try to scale. The more complex these units are going to be, the one less profitable it's going to be, and their volume is going to suffer. With any company, what's happening to Aptera is nothing new. This is just typical manufacturing situations. The companies, they show really cool prototypes and all these features, but in reality, the vehicle looks a little bit different, or the features that they claim will not be there, and they will be later implemented. Like a lot of things happen with Tesla, similar situation.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing. Like again, that's one thing that hurts the value proposition of Aptera is that the early vehicles, probably for the first year or two, are not going to have like basic features like heated and cooled seats similar to a Tesla, or heated steering wheel, or Sentry mode for safety. What are some other features I'm trying to think of?
So I did a little bit. I'm sorry.
I think they're thinking about adopting what is it called? CarPlay or Android
Auto and Apple CarPlay.
But I think they're using a different software to allow that on the unit. I forget what it's called.
On the Aptera, they're using Android Automotive, which is like
that's what it is. Android Automotive, correct?
Yeah, it's like a foundational thing. So yeah, I mean, in general, Aptera is going to be kind of feature sparse at the beginning, and that makes perfect sense again because of the points that you brought up. They're a new company. Everybody goes through those growing pains. I think that because Aptera is a more driver-focused car right now, like it's more or less get you from A to B as efficiently as possible, that issue might not be as big a deal as it could have been with Tesla because they're marketing themselves as a luxury vehicle. Tesla was like, hey, we're a luxury vehicle. We're going to charge luxury prices and that kind of stuff. Aptera is more like, okay, we are not luxury. We're getting you from A to B as efficiently as possible. We're the most efficient vehicle. So I think that messaging might help them out a bit. But yeah, if they don't start putting
from a value perception though, without not having all those features similar to a Tesla, and then the safety and the amount of seats, that's where it becomes kind of scary.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. Like that's part of again, like one of the things that I was thinking about with respect to Aptera's value proposition. What is the value of Aptera? It is simply the fact that it charges itself over the course of your driving. It's a fun little car to scoot around in. You can get to work and home and do a grocery run and that kind of stuff, and you do so in the most efficient way possible. If that value proposition is not enough to supplement the customer base to wanting to go into Aptera without the extra the heated seats and the Sentry mode and that kind of stuff, then it is going to be a really, really rocky road for Aptera starting out. And I'm hoping that
from a business perspective.
Yeah, from a business perspective. And I'm hoping that they steadily increase that value proposition as time goes on to include the stuff that they're maybe not thinking about, that's not in the forefront right now. The stuff that are creature comforts that people would want to have, that, even in a small get around car that they want to have. I have just very recently become a very staunch advocate of heated seats because Colorado is not warm. So
Mhm.
it's me personally, I'm not going to put much thought into a vehicle that doesn't have heated seats. I remember Aptera talking about that they're going to have heated seats but not cooled seats. The cooled seats, I mean, I'm rolling my window down anyway, so I don't necessarily need that part. But yeah, the heated seats were definitely super clutch.
In California, though, where a big part of their market will be, it does get when it gets 110, 115 degrees, it's a huge advantage to have cooled seats. That like really eliminates like your back being completely sweaty.
That's a good point. Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. So
One other
yes,
feature is I think they were talking about how they're going to be heating the vehicle. I believe they're not going to be there's again the first few thousand vehicles are going to be they're not going to include a heat pump. I believe. Do you recall them
so
talking about heat pumps or
I
how they're going to
remember
be heating the cabin?
I remember them looking in saying that they were looking into the heat pump technology as something that they would want to use because it's more efficient than
A resistive heating
the resistive
system.
heating. They, for what I understand, are not going to put that in the initial vehicles, but of course, because we're not in production yet, that could change. For now, no heat pumps, and that is another thought process that I had when I was thinking about that, thinking about the features of the vehicles. Like, does that difference make a meaningful enough hit on the efficiency to justify them putting the heat pump in there? Because if it does, then they might prioritize that.
Yeah, because it is a smaller battery pack, and that could affect range even more significantly.
Absolutely.
Maybe it doesn't with the how efficient the vehicle is to move it around. But I think one like the Chevy Bolt, and I think also I know for sure the Chevy Bolt does have a resistive heater, but it heats up water or some kind of liquid. And then apparently that's like a really efficient way of not doing a heat pump to have a resistive heater that heats some liquid medium, and that's an efficient way of heating the cabin. I think also Volkswagen with the ID4, they went to a heat pump and then they retracted it. I think because they didn't see a huge significant difference. So again, I don't know how much of a heat feature issue that is with the efficiency of that turret. Also that it's a smaller cabin. But yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about was the solar range that Aptera is claiming also.
Sure.
So again, I think in ideal situations, I think it's reasonable to expect up to 40 miles or around 40 miles of solar range. But have they really tested the real case consumer scenario when somebody, some people, they have to park their car in a garage or they have to park their car, next to another vehicle or under a tree. And then when they drive to work, they drive into a parking structure, or they live in like a metropolis area where there's large buildings, or again, they park in the shade, or there's a larger vehicle parked next to them. Like what's the real case scenario? Even like living in California where there's sunlight all the time. What's the real case scenario? Is it more like 20 miles of range, even in a worst case scenario, depending on somebody's their lifestyle of living and their environment? So and then that also would affect, the financial sense of, okay, am I getting 5,000 miles of solar range or 10,000 miles of solar range a year? So that's one thing I'm a little skeptical is them claiming that they can get around 40 miles. But again, is that best case scenario? Like the car, the hatch is, angle is facing the sun as the sun goes down or goes up. I feel like there's a lot of variability with that because a lot of people are not willing to park their vehicle outside, especially like in Los Angeles. A lot of people do not park their car outside of their driveway. They have gates, they have garages. Some people live in condominium complexes where they're given they'd rather park their vehicle inside than outside. So yeah, I would love to know what like realistic expectations are and not just best case scenario.
So
Maybe it's still 30 miles. I don't know, or is it actually 20 miles? And that's very significant because then is it worth them to make that huge complexity of adding those panels? Because those panels, it's a lot of R&D, millions of dollars. What if they can make a version of the Aptera that doesn't have solar panels and that can drive the cost down big time?
Okay, so my thought process on that in general was kind of twofold. The prospect of having a okay, we're plugging in so we don't lose all power here. All right. So the value proposition of an Aptera kind of hinges on solar. So I don't know if they would actually remove the solar from the vehicle because it would just make it another EV that's slightly more efficient than a Tesla.
Yeah. But
So
if the price is 25 grand, I mean, if the price is $20,000 instead of 25 grand, I mean, how long does it take to generate $5,000 worth of electricity on a super efficient vehicle?
right, and
That's why I calculated that in a best case scenario, if you drive a Tesla Model 3 20,000 miles compared to driving an Aptera 20,000 miles, the price best case scenario, you're looking at $1,000 worth of saving with the solar range and the efficiency benefit over a Model 3.
gotcha.
So
So yeah, I mean, in that case, what?
what if you're only saving $500 over a Tesla Model 3? So it's going to take 10 years to get a return on the
Right.
solar panels. Is it worth trying to manufacture and scale in that case? And then also, as the price of the Aptera goes up, you're pricing out a lot of people. You're pricing out a lot of your market. Or you can bring down. That's why Tesla sells 20 Model 3s or Ys compared to an X or S. Its price is significant in buying power. It's a 20-to-1 ratio.
Okay. Yeah. So in that respect, I don't know if they have done those studies, but I assume that somebody at Aptera has done the study to say, does it make more sense to have solar panels on it versus not? What is
Or
the
does solar mainly just belong on a roof? Because a roof, it's always there. You don't have to worry about driving your roof into a parking garage or parking your roof under a tree.
right, right, right. So I think that part of the allure of the solar panels is that they move around. But again, the one of the drawbacks, like you were mentioning, is that they move around. I
It's
think
the
that
real case scenario, people where they drive the vehicle. But then again, if you go like camping or something, you're probably you're in sunlight a lot of the time, and it's just speculation. So I'm not exactly sure, but I wonder if
yeah.
realistically, is it only 20 to 25 miles of solar range for the average consumer? Say specifically California. What if it's in a worst case scenario like Washington or Colorado?
Ooh. So,
So
Colorado actually gets one of the most days of sun out of any state. So
okay,
that was part. So that was part of the reason why I went for an Aptera in the first place. When let me see, what was the name of that guy? 2-Bit Da Vinci put out his video about the Aptera some years ago. That was the first time I had exposure to the Aptera, and I was like, okay, how many days of sun do we get in a year here? And so I looked it up, and it was like 320 something. Like it was a ridiculous number of
very
Sundays. So I'm
good.
like, oh, okay, so too easy. Aptera makes sense to me. But yeah, so in those places like Washington, if you're getting a lesser number of days and whatnot, there's a calculator on Aptera's website where you can kind of gauge that on
Yeah.
average. And so like I know,
So their website is, I do enjoy their website.
oh
Their website
yes,
is good, especially that was really easy to see how much of expected range you get. So I like that transparency.
yeah, yeah,
What about for you
absolutely.
though? Do you park your car under shade or under a structure, or
So
would you be comfortable with parking your Aptera out in your main street when you go to work?
when I go to work, I work on a military base, and so they have cameras everywhere watching everything. And in my case specifically, I don't need sentry mode. I don't need to worry about people breaking into my car. I drove through LA and went to like a what do you call it, a sandwich shop there. I can't remember the name of the shop, but it was so awesome. Anyway, had a great sandwich there. Saw like 4 or 5 different people walking up and walking past the Tesla that I'd rented while I was there, and I'm like, okay, it might be time to leave. So like I get that mindset that we need something to supplement or somewhere to keep the car safe and that kind of thing. I do not have that issue in Colorado for
Your
the most
car, your
part.
car gets a lot of sun exposure throughout the day. It's not
Yeah,
really in a shaded area or in a structure.
so I normally park my car in my garage. I have an Acura right now. So I park that in my garage and never take it out, but that is only because I don't have solar panels on the top of my car. I would probably park
Mhm.
it in the sun as much as possible if I were in a position to have a vehicle like the Aptera. So I already have a thought process that the way that I think about driving and where I park my car is going to change completely. And I don't know if that is going to be a good or a bad thing, but it is definitely going to be a thing because of the byproduct that is uh, having a solar powered vehicle in a place where sun exists. You have to park it in the sun. So I'm already making mental adjustments for those changes. But yeah, I think that as it stands, um, there are places where the Aptera is going to, pardon the pun, shine brighter than other places. So yeah, I don't, yeah, man, yeah.
Well, one situation I was thinking about, because I drove from Southern California to Lake Tahoe, and that's like a 6-7 hour drive. Like if I'm driving during the day towards like Tahoe, I mean, it's pretty cool if the vehicle can give me an extra 30 miles worth of range while I'm driving the vehicle for that long period of time. So that's like a huge advantage if you do live in a very sunny climate, because then you're, you know, even though you have a battery range of 250 miles, well, if you're driving for 4 or 5 hours, you're gaining, you know, 20 miles worth of range on top of that, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and kind of start landing this plane here because it has been in about an hour and a half. My wife is going to be like, "Did you disappear? Did you die? What is going on?" Yeah, I appreciate your time. It was a fascinating and fun conversation. Man, we gotta do this again at some point because that was really fun.
Yeah, well, hopefully Aptera gives us some, you know, awesome updates, hopefully in the next few months.
Oh yeah, some nuggets to talk about. Yeah, for all of the viewers out there, thank you guys so much for sticking it out for this entire scenario. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to edit this down to maybe an hour and 20 minutes. So thank you for sticking around for the hour 20. If you like the video, like and subscribe. Check out the channel that I'm linking up there. Yeah, linking it right there. Check him out. He's a great guy, great commentary. Yeah, silky smooth on all the things. He's got a great channel. Thank you for your time again. Yeah, have a great day, everybody. Catch you next time. It's just like, okay, it is very close to a Model 3. Oh my goodness, how dare you? So we are already bumping into that 10-minute timer. So
we can edit this out, right? It's not, you're gonna edit it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna. So it caught me mid sentence, so I'm
No
probably
worries.
gonna have to.
You were talking about the CEO.
Oh, the fingers, they are a poppin'. I feel like we need some elevator music in here. I'm gonna solve my Rubik's Cube while I'm waiting for him. Okay, mix it up first, of course. Alright, and then we start by making the plus sign here. So let's go ahead and make that plus sign. Let's see right there. That's 2 so far. Then we're gonna go get that one up right there. And then we're gonna go ahead and, oh, didn't have the time.